Table Talk with Brenda Perryman is brought to you by Livingston Family Dentistry.
Livingston Family Dentistry knows that good dental care ensures overall wellness, and healthy teeth and gums can perfect your smile. With over 30 years of experience, Dr. Ronald and Dr. Blake Livingston take the time to explain every treatment. Their modern office and friendly staff are committed to making you feel comfortable, informed, and satisfied. Located at 13724 Woodward in Highland Park, call now 313-883-3050. If your teeth are not becoming to you,
then you should be coming to us.
I am back with Table Talk. There was an accident on the lodge. That's why we're starting slow, because it took time for my partners to get here. I let my co-hosts introduce themselves this morning.
Good morning, Chris Summerall, entrepreneur and public servant for the citizens of Detroit.
Good morning. I'm AJ Williams. I am the editor at the Michigan Chronicle City Lifestyle, along with blogger-in-chief at Single Black Chick.
Good morning. My name is Darnell McLaurin. Happy holidays, everybody. I'm a public servant for the citizens of Detroit, as well as a union delegate.
And this is our last show of the year, and I'm excited about that. But we have a lot to talk to you about today. We kind of want to focus for a bit, because a lot's been going on. Every day somebody's outing somebody because they say that this person has sexually harassed them, starting with the President of the United States. So we want to kind of talk about that, because yesterday charges came out against Tavis Smiley. And then also we had charges come out, more charges for Russell Simmons. Now, how far do these things go back? What do you think? I know that a lot of people probably in my viewership have been harassed on the job, and not saying it's not limited to women. Men can be sexually harassed also, right?
Well,
What you laughing at?
I was just waiting on Tiny to come with some
You
crazy
know,
story.
that was like the sound of nervous laughter.
No, but no, actually, the news with Tavis really caught me off guard.
Why?
Because
I want to know why.
So for one, just because there are, and I'm and no way am I undermining someone's serious accusations, but just because someone accuses someone doesn't mean that they're guilty, and then there's a due process. But it appears that because there has been so much momentum in regard to this, like sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, there's a natural tendency for this person to already be categorized and dealt with as if they're guilty. And so, I looked at a short interview that Tavis did to kind of speak up for himself, and he vehemently,
he did have a good point.
Yeah, he vehemently denied it. This is his whole reputation. This is everything for him. So
this is everything for a lot of people. And here's the thing. Sonny Hostin, who is on The View, said last week, I think it was last week Friday, or maybe it was Monday, that all accusers should be taken seriously, and all accusers you should treat them like they're telling the truth. Perhaps so. But then again, I wrote her back and said, I don't believe how she could say that, because there's some people who are vindictive. Sure. There are some people who, because of rejection, decide to say, he raped me.
And that's true, Brenda. But I somewhat agree that all accusers should be taken seriously. But the persons that are being accused are being judged in a public court versus in a real court. And I understand that the statute of limitations are no longer there. But my point is, if I'm to take your accusations as true, then I have to be able to give this person the opportunity to defend themselves. And they aren't given the opportunity to defend themselves. They're being persecuted in the public court. They're being fired, dismissed from their jobs or whatever, without any proof, because the court of law says you have to prove someone guilty. And so they're being punished before they have to have their proverbial day in court.
Well, but with a lot of these public figures, they have these morality clauses in their contract that allow for dismissal. You know, in the idea or without them being convicted of being guilty. So if it looks bad, even if it isn't, they've got contractual right. These companies do to dismiss these public figures, and so it's unfortunate because there's really nothing. If you think about it, there's nothing to stop. Like you mentioned, potentially, let's just say, for instance, someone who was in a mutual relationship to have some bad feelings. The momentum is now you can come out and say anything. It's nothing to stop them from saying it, and then the person be fired.
I think I agree with you both from a perspective of the court of public opinion, especially when you're talking about people who are in media and things like there are immorality clauses. I think further back there was a couple of young ladies that accused, I can't remember the exact story, but accused like 5 black boys of raping them, and then it came out that it was not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, they need to be persecuted just as well as because you affect someone else's their livelihood. But these are the thing that I think is very interesting about this whole #MeToo, the sexual, like all of these stories that's coming out, is unfortunately somebody has to be the foundation of starting a change and starting a conversation around it.
That's why
we're having it, because now it's coming out. Because I think that people should be given the opportunity to defend themselves. In this perspective, I think Tavis Smiley, if he isn't guilty of these charges, is doing the right thing. You have to fight it back. Right. Unfortunately, your reputation is going to be damaged whether you win or not. Then you have to take the perspective of, now I need to go after them in a civil case for, defaming my name. But you're talking about a process. But if we start holding accusers responsible, holding those who are allegedly doing these actions responsible, and start putting like laws and things in place in regards to it, we can't do that without the conversation happening. Then I think further going into the future, it would be a different type of atmosphere around it.
Right. I think it's going to change the whole landscape.
Right.
But, I think of Darnell. Well, let me just start here. Tavis Smiley talked about mutual workplace relationships that, develop. Sometimes they develop. Sometimes they shouldn't develop, but they do. They even have a thing. My daughter was telling me at the plant they have like my work wife. I had never heard that.
Yeah.
I had never heard that. My work husband, my work wife, that kind of thing. I said, what the hell? But Darnell was a student in my class when I met my second husband. And Darnell used to imitate him coming up to my room. Remember, you used to walk like Willie? He used to walk like him and everything like that. He used to come up to my classroom. Yeah, he walk and he imitate. But that was something, because I didn't meet him till he came to Highland Park. But that was a kind of mutual thing and stuff like that. That's kind of different. But it's a very uncomfortable situation when you have a workplace relationship. That is very difficult.
And so that's one perspective. I'm glad you brought that up, because I read in the Tavis Smiley feed a gentleman who said, if you have a relationship with a subordinate, you're wrong, even though it may be consensual, right? So you have 7 billion people on the planet. That means you have 7 billion different opinions on what a work relationship is or what sexual harassment is. And so even though it was consensual, some people are under the belief that is wrong and be construed as going against the morale clause, even though it's consensual. And so the discussion does need to happen. I'm glad we're having this conversation today because even though we may draw the line in the sand, it still won't be clear to everybody on what the rules will be revolving relationships and or behavior in the workplace.
And I agree, and because you're dealing with how people feel, right? And so many times, even with interviewing the individuals that are quote unquote on the who have accused individuals of sexual harassment, they ask them, so how did that make you feel? And that's subjectional, right? So that's not like clear cut, right? And so there could be, as you mentioned, a consensual relationship, right? And then down the road, maybe there could be some type of.
Well, when you talk about morals, you're talking about
Yeah,
religion, and
it's-
religion that goes out the door when somebody desires somebody or gets to know somebody, and they. Well, we have a call. Someone wants to chime in quick so we could get back to the conversation because we started late. Good morning.
Good morning, Queen,
Hi.
and good morning to your staff.
Good morning. Good morning.
Queen, I'm wanting to look at this in a way that where does it end at? Because when you sit back and we search within our own selves, and we examine ourselves, and we look at the world that we live in here in America, where does it end at? And who's behind all of this? Because you actually unraveling America, because many of us it's a sex crazy world here in America. And many of us walk out the door, understand, from maybe a spouse, a husband or a wife, and we are faced with that drive that's by nature in each and every one of us that God put in us. But we live in a society where the scientists have taken advantage of that. And so now here we are in a situation where just about we dress in a way to get someone's attention. We buy things to get one's attention.
I don't want to hear the I dress and things, because remember the line, lead us not into temptation. We have to know people are going to dress like they dress. I understand what you're saying,
And
Muhammad.
you're absolutely right. But Queen, that don't make it right. In the Quran, it tells the female and the males to cover thy adornments. Cover thy adornments. This is what the God orders. Cover thy adornments. Well, what is your adornments? Those adornments are those that attract the opposite sex. And so you look. We live in a world, understand, that regardless of how we may feel about it, Queen, it's out there, whatever, And so you're looking at a situation here in America that this thing, understand, it won't. There's no stopping it. There's no stopping it, because just as the brother has said, anybody can make accusations now behind all of this. And so now you're looking at the unraveling of America, whatever. But America is a sex crazy society.
Well,
and you have to see it for what it is. You can't turn on the TV or the radio and you're not going to see or hear some form
Muhammad.
of sexual. And you can't get away from that, Queen, even in the songs and just about everything now.
We're gonna discuss that. Okay, thank you, Muhammad.
Have a blessed day.
And,
Y'all have a blessed weekend.
You can answer back.
Okay, so I think this is very interesting, because this is the root to me. What's happening now is very symptomatic. The root cause to me, and it's very interesting because I have a variety of male friends. I think it comes down to, you said a lot of things as far as subjective and what a person makes it feel. I think, and I've had these conversations, and it's so interesting to me, and I'm very passionate about it from a female perspective. I am very interested in how the difference between the conception of men and their thought process and women. And I say that from this perspective. I had a simple conversation that blew up into this whole big debate. at a bar with a couple of friends of mine that are very like intelligent, upstanding gentlemen. And it simply came from the fact that I was like, I'm uncomfortable. We were talking about a particular gym that I like to go to versus another one. And I said, well, I like this gym because some gyms I go to work out, I'm constantly ogled. And I'm constantly like, people are trying to say, guys are trying to holler at me. I'm like,
It's the haircut.
It's the haircut. So my friend asked me, he was like, well, what did you have on? I said, well, I had on some yoga pants and a t-shirt. And he was like, well, consider how you dress. I said, no, see, first of all, what you need to understand is as a woman, when I go into a gym, I'm already in a vulnerable space. He clapped back at me and was like, well, because you got body issues. I said, it's not body issues. It's a place where I feel personally vulnerable. I'm trying to do something for me. You in your mind, he's like, well, how do I know if I ever get to see you again? I was like, this is what comes in with being appropriate and understanding how another person feels. I was like, you are selfishly thinking in your head, well, this woman, likes this, or this is a compliment, without perceiving how I may feel.
You said the magic word, perception.
Perception.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have a bigger conversation about men and women and their perception of what's appreciated or not. Because as he said,
or appropriate.
We live in a patriarchal society. It's kind of like coming with the good old boys club that some of this stuff women have not said anything about, because this is kind of like, it's just how it is, without being understood or believed. My friend put on Facebook, believe women. Gentleman on Very Smart Brothers wrote an amazing article where he was like, I don't trust my wife. I don't trust what she says as true, because I've been socialized from a young man to think that women's feelings are fleeting. You just feeling this right now. This is your perception, and it's not valid. And that allows for you or other people to make actions based upon what you feel like I need or what I want or what I feel. And that's not what we should be doing. We should, when you do something or approach a person, you need to first take yourself out and put it in their perspective. Like, is this, be on the side of caution? Like, there are some things that's just like, hello, how are you? But just, I won't say common sense, but I think the conversation should be had, because my friends at the bar literally were like, are you serious? It's the gym. If I see you, why don't, I was like, have you ever thought how I feel?
Right, absolutely. And it's just a matter of, we have to almost educate from the ground up.
Yes.
As far as this is America, home of the brave, land of the free, so-called, for a while. I don't know how much longer, but still, people are free to dress like they want to, but you're not free to put your hands on somebody.
And I just, because it's a passion point for me. And I'm the only girl of 4 boys. So I understand, I've seen how we think differently. I get it. But you have to be able to, like my brothers. My dad had always taught them from a perspective like, look, you're responsible. You're a grown man. You should be able to control your desires and your sexual needs. I shouldn't have to, because I came in here with some, boots over my knee. I'm up here got to worry about what you think or what you feel or how that's going to affect you. You're responsible for your own self and your own space. You're grown. You should be able to control yourself. That does not dictate what I need to wear and I deserve, or I'm asking for something because I dress in a more sexual nature in your perception.
That I 100% agree with your point. But it made me think of a movie, Boomerang, right? Yeah. And so, but what I like to kind of address is setting the standard, because I 100% relate. But there's a standard of where there's a double standard that's set, right? Because the perception is that it's male-female harassment, or that it's male-female aggressiveness, right? And so, but what you see many times, and it's just not spoken of, I can be at the gym, and I know when somebody's looking at me, or looking at a body part of mine.
I know what you mean.
And so, but see, and even with that, I'm sometimes I'm flattered or whatever like that. But it's a perception that it's okay when it's the other way around. Even in the movie Boomerang, when Lady Eloise was just harassing him, we laughed. It was a joke, and so that's the perception. Now,
Marcus.
market, and so in the corporate environment, in the business environment, we know y'all sisters are killing it. So a brother come in now, suited up, fit, right? He's feeling like you feel in the gym, but it's okay because he's supposed. No, no, no,
think it's
no,
okay.
no. What I'm saying is, it's perceived to be okay because you a guy. I mean, who wouldn't want this, right? And so there is a double standard, and so I think that we have to set the standard that that's not good on either side, right? And I personally
agree.
feel like Darnell said, like if I would never date anybody that I'm doing business with, period, in my business, someone that I'm interacting, doing business with their company, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And so now, if business severs and things like that, but for me, and this has been my rule even before this was cool, or before this was the smart thing to do, like it just went back to that: don't mix business with pleasure. And for me, again, I think that my sister has been assaulted, and so I take it very seriously, and I went to do something about it or whatever. So I don't take this lightly. But what I do feel is a culture of, if it's the other way around, it's not that big of a deal because we make movies about it and comedies.
Right.
No,
And
that
do.
movie's
Right. And
20
so-
No, and it come on and everybody laughed just like it was.
And everybody likes Scarface.
And so what you have to understand too is, right,
No.
first of all, sister, you made some very valid points, right? And I think I actually learned something today. So, but going back, what we have to understand is in the household, man kids and women kids are treated differently as it relates to sexuality. When a 16-year-old comes of age, his dad is like, yeah, you got the little cutie with you, y'all taking after old dad, right? But he's sweating the daughter like, you can't go out, you better be home, put your skirt on down to your ankles. So the standard is set at a young age on how we feel about sexuality as it relates to men and women. And so going forward, when you out in the workforce, the woman is raised to think one way, right? But that man kid is raised to think another way. And so now when they become adults and you put them in the same space, right, you're going to have differences.
Yeah, but think about this.
But that skews the lines, though, Brenda. Give me 1 second. And so that skews the line as it relates to sexual harassment. And so here's a point, because at my job, we have to sign these documents every year that we got this sexual harassment update or whatever. But I always pose a question to the instructor that still hasn't been answered.
What's that?
Can somebody define harassment?
Right.
And you can't, because it's based on interpretation.
It's
Perception.
it is based on perception. One thing I do want to hit on, and this is the conversation that I think needs to be had. It's a couple of things. We are based, to your point, the reason why it's cute. I won't say if it's a double standard. I think a contributing factor to the fact that it's a double standard is what you said, from the fact that from children we're socialized in a patriarchal society, where up until probably 50 years ago, women weren't even a part of the workplace, where this is something that had to be defined. Then you start going through kind of like the Mad Men era, where it's the secretary and
Right.
the boss is like
Executive,
pinching
yeah.
her butt and all this other stuff. So now it's a consistent conversation that has to be brought about, because we're very socialized in a patriarchal perspective, even to the point to what you said. I know, and a friend of mine shared on Facebook about young men being molested, and in their perception at 13, 14 by women that are like 25, 28, 30, there is like high five.
Yeah.
They don't even know that they're actually like, you've been abused, which has set your perception up as you become an adult. But that was celebrated. You felt like you were doing something and that it wasn't wrong because your dad or maybe your uncles or things like, oh, okay, that's what you do when you become a man. You got an older woman at 15 taking advantage of you. Yay. We don't have these conversations because in society it's dictated generally by men, from advertising to everything like that. So in order for us to change and make things more equal, we have to have a conversation about breaking down that perspective and stop socializing ourselves to it's being male dominated and women feel like we're the victim and you guys are not being able to be the victim yourselves.
Very
We
true.
can't be.
Wait.
A man cannot be the victim of sexual harassment.
Very true.
Not
Very
never.
true. I agree with all of it. I raised 2 daughters and a son. The son was in the middle, and I was always afraid of this because being raised in the time where I was raised, my mother she kept it tight on me. It was real different, and we weren't allowed to say talk to a guy before he talks to us.
Mhm.
I taught in an era where the girls were more aggressive. The girls have learned to be more aggressive over the years.
Mhm.
I remember finding a prophylactic Trojan rubber on my son's
Give
dresser.
us another name.
What'd you say?
I said, give us another name for it.
I could give you a bunch of names. Anyway, Robert Johnny. I know I could because I really
Careful.
could. Okay.
Yeah, you're
Anyway,
right. Yeah.
I found this prophylactic on my son's dresser. He was about 17, and I picked it up. I said, Ryan. He said, of course, Mom, of course. I had nothing else to say. I just left. He at least knew.
But would the conversation been different if you found it on Courtney's dresser?
Yeah. Well, I think it would have been because, oh, gosh, it would have been. And then, you don't know my world with my big daughter. But it is so difficult being a parent. But one thing I remember my son saying, this was years later when I was getting ready to have my first grandkid. Oh, this was before my daughter was married. I said, God, I don't have any grandkids yet. And my son said, Mom, we're not married yet. And I said, golly, I must have taught him something.
Yeah.
I mean, because they have that sense of responsibility so you could have a partner. And I know things happen, but I have seen so many people sit up and say, oh God, raising kids are hard, and they keep on having babies after another, and they don't have a man there.
Mm.
But that's a whole nother conversation. But what I'm saying is the men, like you said, Darnell, are raised differently. It's the high five generation. But look what has happened to these young ladies right now. Young ladies are more aggressive. They will chase a man down. I've had girls stand on my porch and stalk my son when he was a teenager.
It's I think that even beyond the sexuality of the country, like it's taught as a young boy, stop complaining to a man. As a boy, don't say nothing, suck it up,
Right.
just endure it. And so it's cultural. And so to the point that was made, men are expected not to vent, not to say that's inappropriate. We're because, and it's not because we don't feel a certain way about it, but it's because how we'll be perceived once we
You
speak
don't
on it.
want to be perceived as like a punk or something.
As a it's like, what you complaining about? This
But it crosses so many lines.
It
As
does.
but you know the reality. But you know the reality of
is
it.
it
The reality
crosses
of
so
it
many
is
lines,
it
though.
happens all the time.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
But
Chris
it's
was,
not.
right.
It's not taken as seriously. Even it can be seen. Like like if a guy is ogling, or if say for instance a guy I'm at the gym with is like doing too much. I'm like, bro, come on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Right,
like
but that whole manscape is across a lot of lines. If a guy goes to work and is abused by his officer, his employer, he don't come home and complain to his wife because he got to get that money to take care of his family. So that whole idea, what Chris is saying, is taught across
it
many
gotta be a
lines.
complete
A
reset,
man
men
do
and
what they
women.
gotta
That's what
do.
I'm saying.
I
A
think that
complete
should
reset.
happen.
Right.
Because the tone is the tone or the voice
But
right
it
now.
has to start, as you said, when you're younger.
But it's different now too because we take for it like me. I didn't grow up with my dad in my house. And right, so we make this assumption that your dad taught you this and that or whatever. A lot of my friends didn't grow up with their dad
Yes, right.
teaching them this or
Learn
that
from each other.
or whatever. So there's an assumption that your dad taught you be proud of this and that. No, like so a lot of
Who
guys
taught you?
society.
Okay, so
Society.
then that's where we need to have the conversation.
Right,
Correct,
right,
but
right.
in society it's taught that you don't don't say nothing. If the girl is coming on you, just
It don't
so
make it. It don't
no.
make it
I'm
right,
not
but what I'm
saying.
saying, you got to start
Somewhere.
as
We
our
have a
generations moving forward.
well. Let's see what this phone call is about. Is it Harold? Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Yes, in listening to the conversation, I was thinking, is it a self control, a self restraint that's needed, or is it societal problem? Which one is it? Because when I look at society, I look at the Muslim society where they wear these scarves and all that and long gowns. Then I look at this society, everything is sold with sex. I see Tina Turner. I never thought she was a really good singer, but she sold sex. And I seen Beyonce, the top selling sex. Everything in this society sells sex. The fashion highlights the certain parts of a woman, and breast is showing a cleavage. Those things are sex. Now, is it self-control, or do we have to deal with this question from a societal point of view? That's
Okay.
what I'm wondering. Do I have any? Is that a?
Okay.
Is that any making any sense to you all?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
it does. And
Okay.
so it can be a self control issue, but even though women of Islam wear the hijab or whatever, they have children as well, right? So that means they are a product of the same thing. It's just masked a different way. It's just covered up a different way. And so to that point, yes, it is self control. People have to have self control, but generally, your self control or the way you act or the way you feel is based off the way you were taught. And so, regardless if if I have self control, I was taught to, you know, whistle at women walking down the street. So you know what I'm saying. So that whole mentality has to be changed. So the conversation needs to be had there.
So, what about this coming 30 years later or 40 years later to make these complaints and a person just totally losing their career? How do you all feel about that? I mean, I
The
just,
truth is the truth. I
right.
do feel like the truth is the truth, and so you know, sometimes I'm suspicious of motive, but if you put yourself out there and you violated someone or you assaulted someone, and in many instances, this isn't just harassment. This is actual assault that we're talking about. So we're talking about some very serious accusation. And so if you cross that line, I don't feel there should be a statue, right? Especially if I'm thinking if it was my sister or my mother, And so, and to the caller's point, I think that it's a combination of both. I think that it's a combination of self-control and societal. But I don't think that if a woman chose to, I was driving from Tennessee one time, and I was with some of my college buddies, and there was a girl. She was walking on the side of the freeway, and she pretty much just had, she barefoot. She seemed delirious. She pretty much had on bra and panties. Hair was disheveled. We passed her up. One of my boys was like, "Man, we gotta help her," right? So we backed up, and she was young. She was like our age. Put her in the car. She got in the car in the front seat. I got in the back, and I'm looking at my boy in the rearview mirror, and she just started like going crazy, doing some crazy stuff. So we got off the freeway and just dropped her off.
Stuff.
She like put her head in between her legs all the way down and was just like smelling her feet and all type of stuff or whatever. Now she was dressed in bra and panties, no shoes and stuff like that. That doesn't give us no license to look at her as a sexual object. We looked at her, honestly, we looked at her like, man, this girl obviously has some issues and she doesn't need to be walking. So regardless if she was naked, we can't make any assumption that, man, she must want to entertain, anything. That's the self-control part, and so I would defer to the other panelists.
Go ahead.
No, I would agree with you from a perspective that we do have to start being able to have a conversation around what you said as far as just because I dress a certain way or just because it really goes back to how you said that as a child, how we are taught to perceive that. What I do agree with you said earlier in the conversation is you never would mix business with pleasure. This goes also back to morals and things that we're taught when we're younger of veering on the side of caution. I used to make a joke with my friend and my friends or some conversations that we may have that's inappropriate, or maybe out, having fun doing our own thing, and like pictures are being. I'm like, no, because you never know. I may be president one day, and I mean, right now I probably could be considering, but I always am thinking ahead. Like, how will this action, if it's documented, how will it be perceived? How will it be ahead? Even if my intentions are different, even because people don't know your intentions. People, so you like
they don't care.
They don't care. And what you said was very on point for me. Assume. I think we assume a lot of things versus assuming and veering on the side of caution that this person may not want this, even though my intent may be different, or it may not be, or it may be pure. I may be interested. How will this affect me and this person in the future? We are, inherently selfish, and we don't think in a communal sense
and
of how
impulsive.
this may happen.
We're impulsive too.
Right.
Darnell?
The only thing that doesn't have a statute of limitation is homicide, right? And so we know as young guys or young women in the college setting, we do some pretty crazy things, right?
Yep.
I just don't believe that 30 years down the line, I worked in my job for over 25 years. I don't think anything that I did in the military should come back and stop me from, being who I am today, because I was a different person then, right? And I look at Donald Trump, for example. One of the ladies that was accusing him, although we know his behavior continued, but one of the ladies that was accusing him was like in the 60s. It happened in the 60s. I listened to her conversation the other day. She was like, it was me and Gloria Vanderbilt, and Donald Trump came in. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But all I'm saying is, going forward, though, sure, I know they got the morality clause in their contract or whatever, but I can't be held accountable, although I can be, and I get that. I don't believe, it's I hate to make it so small, but the running back for the Dallas Cowboys got a suspension in the NFL for something that happened in college. Two different arenas. And so that's what I don't believe in. If it happened within the last 10 years, even though the statute of limitations is like 300 days, if it happened in the last 10 years, you're probably the same person. And I get that. But whatever I did 25 years ago, I would want to make amends for it if it had lasting effect, right? Because we know some children, 30 years old, be like, I was bullied when I was in kindergarten. It affected them, lifelong. So if I did something that affected you lifelong, certainly hold me accountable to some degree. But
let me say this. I agree. I understand what you're saying as far as the statute of limitations. And I understand when we're high school, college, you're still developing. You're still understanding and, taking into consideration what's right and wrong and what your consequences are. However, what you said is very true. What you did to me in college, although you're a different person, it affected me. You never know what you assaulting me or maybe doing something inappropriate has long-term effects. So yes, statute of limitations to a certain extent, but I think that's why women are saying these things, because as a victim of something, just being able to vocalize what happened to you is a freeing perspective. Now, true enough, I may not be able to bring any type of lawsuit against you, but also it is letting it be known that you affected me 30 years later, because I still, you might forgot, but it still plays in my head.
Okay, so
let me know.
Let
me know how it affects you.
No.
AJ, but do you think that 25 years ago should affect his standing in the community now?
Now this goes back to kind of what you said as far as society and just self-control. What we're taught. Well, I grew up a PK, and I'm very different than what I was then. However, biblically, just to say, not saying that the Bible is the basis, but biblically it says it is in the hearts of men to continue to sin when a punishment is not brought. Some people learn, and it was a silly mistake. But some people, because no consequences was brought during that time, the behavior continues and worsens.
Well, because they've gotten away with it.
So why would I stop? I assume this is the norm. I assume this is what I can do. I assume it's entitlement. It's and it's a long
But
way without
I-
thinking what people will be
I'm
affected
saying,
by.
what if that person has changed and not the same person they were back then? What Darnell was saying.
I think if you've changed, if it's I've changed. So if things that I've done in my past, you always have to be forward thinking. I still think you are accountable. Now
You
here's
can't
what
you can't have
do.
it like that.
You
Yeah,
can-
I'm
you
just
can-
asking.
You can sit and say, well, I am a person that I hold myself responsible. People love a comeback story. People love the fallen hero.
Black
When-
people.
I think people
Everybody.
in general
Black
do.
people love second
I think
chances.
I think that's just a
Corporate
human
ain't so
nature
ain't so.
where you
That's
can take
corporate, Chris. Everything
responsibility.
is
That's where these people
corporate.
work.
When you
Not
when you
everything.
can take
No, that's
responsibility
we-
for
they didn't bring
something.
that part up. Well, what I'm telling Chris just said to me. Say what
Well,
you said.
I said that as it relates to forgiveness, it appears that black people are more forgiving of these individuals and willing to give them
Yeah.
a second chance. But this is
But what you said,
but not
afterwards,
but
you
not
said
in
corporate,
not in
and all I
corporate.
was saying to you is not only corporate. You're standing in the community, your particular community. I didn't know John did that. back
Exactly.
but- but
and that everything is not corporate.
no,
That's
no,
what I'm
I know,
trying to
and
tell you.
everything is in corporate. But what I'm saying is, these folks' checks don't come from black people; they come from their corporate companies. And so, but
Yeah,
but
I agree.
but my one point that I do want to make is that while I'm no conspiracy theorist, well, I do think that this exposes any and everyone, and it puts any and everyone on notice that
Absolutely.
we can remove you. We can crush you. That's why I have so much respect for individuals like Colin Kaepernick, because you knew they combed through every person that he talked to, spoke with, went out with, whatever like that. And so, but I think what it does is it lays an underlying theme that don't get comfortable, right? Because and while I don't take anything away from the victims, I'm willing to bet that in many instances it's retaliatory.
Here's my thing though. You can't retaliate against me if I ain't do nothing.
No, because it's the
did.
accusation that gets people terminated.
But you
Not the
still
not
did- if
no,
you-
no. It's an accusation versus
Here's the thing.
an actual proven. Like you could say that Chris, you did this, so forth and so on. And if I can't say, for instance, there's no proof, and it's your word against mine. It's public, the public court of opinion. So these folks aren't convicted of
Here's what I'm
anything.
saying.
Tavis Smiley hasn't been convicted.
Here's what I'm saying when I say it's retaliatory because you did it. Here's the thing. If you did not do something, case in point with Tavis Smiley, I think by all means, you need to make it, holler it to the rooftop, take it to the very end to defend yourself. Now, once all things are cleared out, you can take the appropriate measures, even in the same perspective of a person who did do something back 30 years ago. You own your accountability or you being resolved of the situation, and people love a comeback. Like, we will accept you back.
but it's
and then
a
you can
lot.
move
People wanna
forward.
believe
Let me
what they
say
wanna
this: it's a
believe.
lot easier for a man to come back than a woman.
I agree with that.
We have Kay on the line. Good morning. Good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm on the air.
Yes.
Okay. I do want to say that it amazes me how mostly white women are complaining about what happened to them 30 years ago, and we all fly into a tizzy and forget about the big picture. Because I can guarantee you that Donald Trump, Governor Snyder, and Mike Dugan are in the background doing something that we ought to be paying attention to. Not these mostly white women who get to scream something happened to me 40 years ago, and we all run into it. I mean, I'll go into a tizzy. But thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. So, okay, we have 3 minutes left. We have 3 minutes left. I just want to, this takes a lot more conversation than 3 minutes, but my main concern was, how does this change the environment? Are men afraid to say different things to women that they might have said a year ago?
Absolutely. Like even just, nice dress you got. Nice. I like that color. I've come in on many times and said, I really like that color on you, Brenda. Like I really feel when you have so much opinion on stuff, there are guys who have done nothing wrong that are now just going to be like, I would.
I have tunnel vision.
And
now.
totally would.
constantly,
That's
you know, and
cool.
I find
Yvonne's
myself
on
doing.
we have a quick call.
Oh, okay.
Yvonne's on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm enjoying your show this morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I have one comment to make. This is a white woman thing, because trust me, if black women would have came out with this, it wouldn't have got nowhere. This is white women and that white movement for the women behind this. Thanks for taking my call.
Let me just say to this. I totally understand. As a black woman, black girl magic, unapologetically black. I hear where the frustration comes from. However, let's be mindful. The woman that started the Me Too movement
It's a
was
black,
a black
woman.
Yeah, that's true too.
A black woman.
I will say this going forward, you know, and I work in a male-dominated society, or you know, male-dominated workforce, profession. So, and we have very few women in that profession, and so, but they right in there in the situations, you know, where normal women wouldn't be. You know, we see them in, you know, in their underwear, you know, whatever,
Right.
because we in the same.
Where do you work
Right.
again?
Right. So we're in the same, you know, sleep next to each other. I mean, it's there. So I'm just simply saying.
He's a firefighter. Just
No,
in case
Right.
you
no,
didn't
he obviously
know.
works in some type
I
of
keep
illegal
telling
operation.
Brenda, don't be telling my business, people.
He's obviously
anyway,
working in some type of illegal
I-
operation.
So
I
anyway,
give my audience a reason.
right.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what I find myself doing, and I believe there's a lot of gentlemen doing the exact same thing.
Sleeping on the couch instead of in the room.
Yeah, no, yeah, is like soul searching. Like, have I done some stuff that was like kind of, you know, jacked up back in the day? Because even the mailman is wondering, can he lose his job now because of
Oh,
something that happened a long
it's
time
that-
ago?
It's that time. Golly, I hate that. Everybody, this conversation doesn't end yet. We'll continue it next year because this is my last show for the for December. And I wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all the good stuff. And thank you, gentlemen and lady, for everything. And
And if I did something between the 5th and the 8th grade that affected you,
yeah,
Where are you work? Where do you wear? 'em when you-
okay, okay. See you.